It's the war that changed the world forever. But what do we really know about it? Most people only know the headlines: trenches, poison gas, and the lost generation. But behind those stories, there's a truth that most of us have never been told. Part 1. The Spark. Today, we're diving deep into the real story of World War I, and trust me, you won't believe what you'll discover. It all began with a single spark. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary was assassinated in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914. But that one shot didn't just kill a man. It set off a chain reaction that would consume the entire world. But here's the catch. That spark almost didn't happen. The assassin, Gavrilo Princip, was just 19 years old. Imagine this: a single teenager with no direct connection to the ruling elites who would trigger a global conflict. What would have happened if the assassination had failed? Would we have avoided the horrors that followed? Part 2. The Madness of Trench Warfare. Now, let's talk about the trenches. The hell that thousands of men called home for years. Over 1 million soldiers died in the trenches. But do you know what's even crazier? Those men didn't just face bullets. They faced rats, disease, and the brutal cold. During some of the bloodiest battles, soldiers were forced to stay in the same trench, surrounded by their fallen comrades, for days on end. The stench of death was so overpowering, it was said that soldiers could barely tell the difference between a dead body and a living man. But there's a secret to the trenches that no one tells you about. Some soldiers actually built makeshift theaters underground to escape the madness above. They performed plays, even staged concerts. But why? To stay human in a place that tried to strip it all away. Part 3. The Deadly Innovations. World War I didn't just kill soldiers, it changed the face of warfare forever. Poison gas, tanks, and airplanes, technologies we now associate with modern warfare, but they were all first used in this war. But did you know that the first tanks were so slow and clunky that soldiers initially thought they were just giant mobile toilets? It's true. The British thought they'd use these monstrous machines to break the stalemate. But instead, they had to learn the hard way how to make them work. And then there was poison gas, the most terrifying weapon ever devised at the time. Soldiers, completely unprepared, would watch their comrades die painfully as they choked on fumes. But what most don't know is that the gas attacks were often so brutal that soldiers would beg to die in combat rather than experience the agony of the gas. Part 4. The Psychological Toll. But World War I wasn't just about physical suffering. It shattered minds. Shell shock, what we now call PTSD, was so common that it was estimated 1 in 3 soldiers would suffer from it. But back then, no one knew how to treat it. Some men were just thrown into mental institutions, forgotten. One soldier wrote, "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forget what I've seen, but will I ever be able to remember who I was before it?" Can you imagine that? A young man, just torn apart by war, wondering if the person he was even existed anymore. Part 5. The Unknown. Truths. So far, we've touched on the horrors of war, but there's something even darker that you've never heard about. There are secrets from World War I that still aren't fully understood to this day. What did they do to keep the public in the dark about the true cost of the war? And here's the real kicker. Did you know that one of the most significant battles of the war was actually completely covered up? Millions of lives were lost, yet no one remembers it. You might be surprised to know that the battle I mentioned was the Battle of the Somme. But what you probably didn't know is that for years, governments tried to hide the true scale of the suffering. It was a slaughter that didn't need to happen. but was pushed forward by strategic incompetence. And one of the greatest secrets? There were secret ceasefires that took place during the war, where soldiers on both sides would meet in no man's land to trade food, smoke cigars, and for a brief moment, remember that they were all just human beings. It's a small detail, but it changes everything. The real story of World War I is about more than just battles. It's about humanity in the face of unimaginable horrors. And that's the real story of World War I. But before you go, I want to know, what part of this story shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're hungry for more untold stories from history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an episode. This is Rowan Days, and I'll see you in the next video.